Hello again, everyone. Nathaniel Gibson here, bringing to you my Week 2 multimedia discussion on public goods and how they lead to market failure. As a brief overview to the presentation today, I will be discussing a modern example of a market failure, in this case, a public good, as well as how the federal government has intervened in order to make a private good into that public good. So the public good that I'm looking at is the COVID-19 vaccine. And if you did your homework this week, you're probably thinking, like me, that this wouldn't be considered a public good, and you'd be right. Public goods must, by definition, be non-rival, meaning that if one person was to get vaccinated, that doesn't prevent anyone else from also getting a vaccine. And secondly, they also must be non-exclusive, meaning that it cannot be excluded from those who can't afford it. In other words, it has to be widely available to people. And regardless of your idea of the validity or your opinion on the vaccines, the effect that they have had, especially this last year, as a good on the economy has been substantial. Mandates by the government and some companies are the results of how they see vaccines being or having positive externalities associated with having a vaccination. And vaccines are technically a private good and would normally have disadvantages associated with them, but like private goods, they have intended effects, which in this case, the positive externality, that go beyond just the individuals who are receiving the vaccines. The hope with vaccination efforts is that it will prevent the spread of disease, meaning that the possibility of others not contracting the virus from you is reduced because you have been vaccinated. But like private goods, a vaccine costs money and time to produce and distribute, which means in the case of a global pandemic, government has to intervene in order to provide widespread production and distribution of the good for the public. So, entering stage right is the federal government. Because of the intended positive externalities associated with vaccines, the government has issued tons of money in order to provide and produce the COVID-19 vaccines to the general public. This effort by the federal government to scale up production and distribution of the vaccine is all with the intended goal of making it a non-rival and non-exclusive public good, which can be accessed by anyone at any time and for zero cost. The reality, though, is this can never be accomplished as the amount of money required to fund such a venture far outpaces even the US debt waterfall. Eventually, funds and supplies become outpaced by demand, and quite simply, the good cannot be provided anymore. So, whether these vaccines are really effective is not the point of this discussion. Rather, it's to observe how the government has intervened in order to make a specific good available to the mass public, similar to a public good, but succinctly limited in its maximum potential of provision of the vaccine for others. That wraps up my discussion. Looking forward to chatting with all of you this week on your observations as well.